amazing company right now. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
If people don't know, you're running for the sixth district, right? As a
Yep, South
candidate.
Carolina's 6th congressional district. Very rural district, 97% rural, as a matter of fact, and lacks a lot of resources.
And can you tell us a little bit about the challenges in the districts right now that
Well, one of
the
them
region is facing?
you're seeing, I'm in my, I'm in town. That's what we call it in small towns. When we go to Main Street or the center, the business district, we call it town because my connection at my home is so awful that trying to connect the StreamYard is a platform for whatever reason that I tend to have a difficult time trying to use. So I had to go to town to get a stronger connection because 5G is not available where I live. So that's one. Broadband is absent in some areas, literally absent. Another thing is the quality of water. My district has the unfortunate distinction of having some of the most toxic water in the United States of America. Denmark, South Carolina had an untested chemical. And Denmark, South Carolina is the town right next to where famous musician James Brown was born. And they were having an untested contaminant, that's what I refer to it as, but a chemical placed in their water system for 10 years, unapproved, untested. And North Charleston has some of the highest levels of toxicity in the entire country. We also have an extremely high poverty rate. They don't gauge poverty by the number of children that get free and reduced lunch anymore, but as recently as 2 years ago, they did. And in my school district, 96% of the kids qualify for free and reduced lunch. So that gives you an idea of just how high the poverty is here. And the current person who holds the office, Congressman James Clyburn, has been in his seat for 30 years, and we are the sixth poorest district in the United States of America out of 435. After 30 years, he should have a better showing than what he currently has. So you've had 30 years to get it right. You have not been able, and you're not going to be able to do it in just 2 additional years. So it's time for someone to step up and give these people the better that they deserve. My citizens, my neighbors. And I didn't see anyone offering that. So that person's me now.
And how long have you been living in this district for?
My entire life. My
Okay.
family has been in this region. The district, district lines change, but my family has been in this region on the coast of South Carolina since the mid 1700s. And that's as far back as I've been able to go, but probably even further. So I'm Gullah Geechee, which is a Creole culture, the Creole culture of the coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and northern Florida.
I
It's
know
on my
about the Geechee.
maternally and paternally. So this area is literally, I'm a part of this area. The Gullah Geechee people that you know is we're connected to the land. Our culture is land based. So this area means a lot for me. I've been here my entire life and I don't plan on leaving.
Right. And for the people who are connected to this land, what changes are they looking for? What changes in this area that they're seeking?
Well, one, schools. South Carolina has an entire nickname for a system of schools we have along I-95, which is called the Corridor of Shame, which refers to the dilapidated buildings here and also refers to the rates of perennial academic failure that a lot of the students here experience. For Black American students, it's as high as 75% are not reading nor doing math on grade level. I went to such a school. In fact, the school district where I attended, the Jasper County School District, and that's the county I'm in my hometown, Ridgeland, is, was, or maybe it was, I'm not sure if it's the same. I have not seen information saying it's changed, but I'm going to think it's the same, the lowest performing school district in the state of South Carolina. So that's one thing. Quality schools. It's not because the teachers are not
Mhm.
quality teachers. It's that we are putting the responsibility on teachers to solve problems that we pay politicians to solve. We pay politicians to write policy, write legislation, and to pass good policies that are going to support our communities and families. Instead, we have somehow put the burden on teachers. So teachers are dealing with kids who come with emotional trauma, mental trauma, physical trauma, who are usually 3 to 4 grade levels behind, who have serious behavioral issues, and they are entrusting teachers to do with far less support and far less resources what the community and the politicians have failed to do. The second one is land. For Black Americans in particular, we've lost, and when I say Black Americans, I'm talking about Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves. The congressional term is freedmen. We've lost 80% of our land since 1969. 80%. 50 million acres total, and we've lost 14 million of it. 80% of that happened since the 1960s. Gullah Geechee people, because we've historically lived along the coast, we've had oceanfront community. We've had our land stolen from us, and that still happens till this day. So for the Black citizens here, keeping our land and getting compensated for the land that has been stolen from us. Another thing is high levels of gun violence. These are a lot of small towns and cities, but the level of gun violence is larger than that of big cities, such as Chicago. You hear about Chicago, but you don't hear about the gun violence in North Charleston. And poverty breeds gun violence. Lack of opportunity breeds gun violence. Poor education breeds gun violence. High levels of day-to-day stress. Lack of health care. I'm talking about not just physical care. I'm talking about mental, emotional care breeds gun violence. So those are just some of the issues that exist in my district. And the big one, lack of industry.
And I mean, there's so much that your district is dealing with in terms of education, in terms of economic opportunity, in terms of preserving your wealth and having that land, right? Because most people, a lot of times, how they make money and how they create generational wealth is through the
Land.
land, right?
Exactly.
It's land asset. So I mean, when you have all these different areas that needs to be addressed, and you talk about repairing Black America, what does that look like? What does the first 50 days to 100 days look like? Not in like any detail, but you talked about the water, you talked about education, you talked about land, you talked about economic opportunity, even to the point where you said, hey, we don't have 5G.
Right.
So
Exactly.
where do we start? Where we start in terms of the first things that you would like to address?
Well, the first thing I am going to do is what I was always raised to do by my mother. My mother is into this eat right for your blood type, homeopathology stuff. She's one of
Hmm.
those people. And my mother
Yeah.
always, she was one of those people like, don't take any synthetic medication.
Hmm.
Here's an
None of the
oil.
chemicals and all that stuff in
Right.
that.
And my great grandmother, if Gullah Geechee people, we have a plant. Man, in fact, I have it right here. I'm going to show it to you.
Hmm.
Called Life
Okay.
Everlasting.
Okay. Health is
Yes,
wealth. Okay. Yeah.
it's a medicinal plant. When we got
Mhm.
sick, we never took medication. My great grandmother made some Life Everlasting tea. It's called Life Everlasting because it was believed to help people live much longer. And you know what? All my great grandparents died in their late 90s, and my great grandmother, the ultimate Nana, she died at
Mhm.
101. So there might be
Oh
some truth
wow.
to
What is that plant called again?
Life Everlasting. You can look it up. It's a Gullah Geechee
Life.
favorite.
Okay.
Life
Okay. And then
Everlasting.
so you mix it up in a tea, or you pour a little honey
You
in it,
take
or
it,
how does that work?
you take a big pot of water and you literally just throw the branches in there with the leaves on it. It smells like honey, but it's very bitter. So I
Mhm.
usually add lemon and sugar to it because it's extremely bitter, even though it has a very sweet smell. It's
Mhm.
no sometimes white people here they call it rabbit tobacco, or sometimes they call it sweet
Rabbit
everlasting.
tobacco.
Even though it's not
Okay.
generally something that the white people here are known for doing, those who know about it though, they call it sweet everlasting because of its sweet
Mhm.
smell. But that's ironic because it has such
It
a
has a bitter
bitter,
taste.
acidic
Yeah.
taste. So you
And
have
it
to
just
put.
cleanse the system throughout. Cleanse the
Yeah,
system.
it's good for your skin. It's good for it deals with flu, stomach aches, headaches. I believe I contracted COVID, and that's
Mm.
all I use. And it makes you sweat intensely, and it makes you sleep intensely. But when you wake up, whatever was troubling you will be gone.
Ooh.
So the point I'm making is that I
Yeah.
was raised to never just treat the symptoms of an issue.
Hmm.
You treat the cause of an issue.
Cause. Hmm.
So the first 50 days for me is this. One, I'm going to write a true reparations bill. And I know people hear that and they think, well, that ain't never going to happen. Or, we're going to trust this government that's done us so wrong, Black Americans, to give us what we owe. First of all, they're not giving us anything. That's the first thing we need to change. They're paying a debt. Reparations is a debt that the federal American government owes. It doesn't come from any tax-paying citizen. It doesn't come from tax revenue. It comes from the federal American government that can create and generate. And I know you know this because you deal with Bitcoin. You know about the fiat system. So
Hmm.
you know that the American government can create their own currency. And all they need is an expansion from the Federal Reserve, and they literally don't have to raise a single penny of tax for that to be done. That's the first thing I'm gonna do. And reparations is going to include Black Americans getting paid for the unpaid wages that our ancestors did, and also for the trillions of dollars we lost in opportunities due to redlining, Jim Crow, and on the matter of land, most lynchings were not because of some white woman lying, doing her little Karen role. It was because of land theft. So my
Hmm.
reparations bill is going to address that. It's going to bring back the Freedmen's Bureau, which was a department of the government that was supposed to make sure that Black Americans coming out of slavery were fed, received health care, had housing, had land, had protection, were giving fair wages, and to advocate for us in any area where we could have faced anti-blackness. Had they been allowed to do their job, we would not be advocating for reparations right now because we would have already have had it. But they were
Hmm.
sabotaged when the Republicans, at that time, the Republicans were the party that was looking out for Black Americans,
Yep.
when the Republicans betrayed us during the compromise of 1877. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to do is I am going to, and underneath the reparations bill and through
Hmm.
the Freedmen's Bureau, deal with the issue of land justice. One, by repairing heirs' property. For those who do not know to what I am referring when I say heirs' property is a system where a person who owned land did not leave a will. So no one can ever own that land unless everyone in the family comes together into an agreement, which is almost impossible. So because of that, everyone gets a share of the property, but you don't get any equity from it, which means you will never be able to get that generational wealth that white Americans were able to get from land that the government gave them via the Homestead Act. We just get a share in it. And what used to happen was usually a racist white judge, and usually a person who had money, usually a white person, would come and buy the share of one family member. And then they will go to a judge who would illegally, because the system of heirs property never really was supposed to have allowed this, who would say, look, I have $10,000 and that's enough for each of them to get 5,000 and I'll get them out of there. And the judge would say, okay, this land is yours, and tell the family, get going. That happened to Black Americans all the time. It still happened here in
Yeah.
South Carolina until a law was signed, and we lost millions of acres that way. It was stolen. So I'm going to
Hmm.
deal with that through the Freeman's Bureau. The next thing I want to do with water and infrastructure
Hmm.
is I'm going to make sure that in rural communities, one of the reasons why we have such terrible water quality or we lack broadband is because the utility companies that serve us, they have a hard time getting enough personnel to work in our communities, retraining them, retaining them because they don't get access to federal funding. I am going to write legislation making sure that utilities that serve rural communities or poor communities in general always have access to federal funding to make sure they have enough staff to upgrade the infrastructure, to upgrade the water filtration systems. And in regards to school, I'm going to reform the way schools are funded. Right now, the way schools are funded, the rich really do get richer and the poor really do get poor because schools are funded based on property taxes. So if you live in a community that's wealthy, the property tax revenue is very high. The schools there get an abundance of resources. Whereas if you're like me and you grew up in a community that was desperately poor, the tax revenue is low, so your school gets less. You're punishing a child for being born to poor parents. That's not the way it should be. There should be a state standard for every kid to get a quality education. The amounts will be different depending on the state. But in South Carolina, for example, we get that monetary amount. If a county cannot reach that standard, I'm going to write legislation with a federal government that spends over trillions of dollars for its military and in aid to foreign countries, close the gap, the difference, and pay so that county can meet that state standard so we can invest in educating our students and feeding them healthy, nutritious meals. And that way, education can truly then be the great equalizer that people claim it is, but has never been.
Now let's walk through that because you rolled out quite a few agendas, and you talk about the Federal Reserve, and I want to get this correct. So obviously, we know about the fiat system, how they can essentially just press a button
Yes,
and
numbers on a
print
computer.
another $4 trillion, right? Like they did last year. So
As they
are
just did for the
you?
Ukrainians
Yes. So
last week.
So, are you suggesting that that number should another printout should be, and that will be allocated to descendants of former slaves?
So, yes, and here's why. Because everyone has bought into this deficit myth. In fact, there's a book written by a woman who I feel is brilliant, at least in her work on the economy. And when it comes to the fiat system, Stephanie Kelton, you probably know that name because I know y'all read a lot of these books. She wrote a book called The Deficit Myth. I've been reading a lot of her work, but come to find out, her work was not new. This is really just the way it works. We have this idea of the government being like us. If I have $20, but I owe you 50, somehow I have to go and get that $30 because we think the government work and we think the government works that same way. No, because the government has an ability that we do not. The government can create its own currency. And then we may say, well, what about the debt? What about the debt? We're gonna have to pay it back. That's another myth. Myth number two. The US is a monetary sovereign. That's the reason why they can generate their own currency. And but also, the U.S. is a monetary sovereign. Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan, just two of the former chairmen of the Federal Reserve that exist to make sure we do not fall into financial ruin, have said the U.S. can never run out of money. They can never not pay its bills. The U.S. doesn't owe anyone. The U.S. does not have to pay a debt to anyone besides itself. Like you said, debt simply means when the U.S. spends money, the federal government that does not collect back in taxes. Now, people may then say, well, that's the problem right there. But no, the federal government does not need taxes. State governments run off of tax revenue because they cannot print their own currency. Federal governments do not. What we call debt is really U.S. Treasury bond, yellow dollars that usually banks buy, credit unions buy. And what do we do with those yellow dollars? They pay these banks and credit unions, they pay on the interest. And that's how banks and credit unions and a lot of other financial services are able to give out loans, are able to make investments from the interest that the federal government pays on that debt. But whenever the federal government wants to, they can simply say, okay, here's the money for the debt. Give us back our yellow dollars. And
Right.
deficit is simply a myth. When there's
Well,
a deficit,
so I will offer you a alternative perspective, right? So when Bitcoiners, us Bitcoiners, when we look at the current monetary system right now, and they call it Keynesian economics, right? And that is on the assumption that the U.S. dollar, since it's the global reserve currency, right, it can never be debased, right? And we
I
can
that's what
always print. We
I
can always
hear
print money,
all from
right?
y'all all the time. Yes.
Right. So, but the unintended consequences of that, of printing additional money, is it actually increases inflation. And obviously, right, we're living in a time period where we're experiencing one of those moments in time.
Mm-hmm.
One, the $4.5 trillion that was printed in 2020 because of the pandemic. And now the money that was printed to help Ukraine, and then also with Putin closing down the oil reserves and the oil trade with us to increase the oil prices, we have experienced inflation rate of 7.9% this year. And the Federal Reserve tries to hit an inflation target of 2%, right? So this is what the numbers that they're telling us right now. And when we talk about inflation, this is very important for the Bitcoiners and our perspective. So when we talk about inflation, basically inflation says if we're hitting a 2% inflation target, that basically means if I have $100 today, 365 days, 1 year from today, that $100 will be worth $98, right? In terms of purchasing power. So we're losing purchasing power, and that has been accelerated by 7.9%. So when we say it directly, it's like basically everyone gets 7.9% poorer. And that's how our system works. So our $100 are not going to get the same amount of groceries that it did last year. So everything becomes much more expensive. And when we say that is because they're central actors who can print the money system. So our perspective is that we need to remove the monetary policy from central actors, from human bias, human greed, those who are the ones who print this money and are the first to benefit from it. And we all know that trickle down economics does not work.
Doesn't work. No.
Right. So when we look at infrastructures like Bitcoin, this is programmed fairness into the protocol. It's egalitarian by nature. There is no one that can decide or control the issuance of the 21 million Bitcoin. There will only ever be 21 million, right? You can't inflate that away. So it's actually deflationary by nature, right? So when we look at it in terms of land, right, it's a harder store asset than gold, than land. The land, there's only so much, right? So that's always going to go up in value. That's why most rich people who are wealthy, they don't have money in their savings. They have it in stocks and in real estate, right?
Exactly.
Because those are hard. Well, stocks fluctuate, but they have a number go
assets
up.
like bonds and stocks and land. Let me say something. I was going to get to that. The main limit on a monetary sovereign is inflation. Inflation is the real limit and the real concern. However, one thing that people leave out of the inflation conversation is what you kind of already alluded to. Inflation, those bad actors, the central government, the people who are the central forces.
Yeah.
Inflation can be engineered, and it often is. Now, inflation can be caused by two reasons. One is the one we typically think of. There's too much money in the market. But actual research has shown that is very ever really happened in the United States of America. And here's another thing, too. Inflation is not so much about how much money is in the economy, but about how much goes into the economy at any given time. So my reparations plan that I am proposing is that when my freedmen people, Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves, get their reparations checks, they will not get the full amount, which, by the way, we are still in the process of determining that amount, but we know it is going to be at least $2 million per person or more. We're not going to just get that one flat rate check and say, okay, who knows how many Black Americans are in America, because we've been undercounted since the 3/5 compromise. The census undercounts us every single damn decade. But
you're saying they're not receiving one flat check at one period.
Okay, this part is very important. This part is very important. The government will take on the debt and simply pay us on interest on those bonds that we have. That way you don't have this massive infusion of money in the economy, because that would definitely cause the type of inflation that we typically think. The other form of inflation is the one we see right now and the one we always see. that people don't think of. People think inflation means, oh, you're giving people money. Pause, because the U.S. can actually universal basic income, and it would actually help the economy. And those stimulus checks they gave out actually saved the economy from going into a Great Depression. When they bailed out the auto industry, the banking industry, the airline industry, most recently, that actually saved the economy. So giving giving out money, as what we want to call it, which really to me should be looked at as investments, can work. What often causes inflation is an issue you've already touched on. The people who benefit the most from currency being generated, they often they can control and manipulate how much of a certain resource goes into the economy. Long before this thing with Russia was taking place, there was already a quote unquote supply chain issue at pause. What we are seeing that's not being called out a lot, a few reporters are doing it. We're seeing a lot of manufacturers who are delivery manufacturing a far higher demand for their products by manufacturing lower than what they would
Mhm.
usually do. Russia is doing it pretty much out front, and so a lot of these oil, what they call them, OPEC countries that
Yeah,
produce
yeah, the OPEC,
premiums, right? They
the
already told
petroleum exporters.
they've
Mhm.
already said, no, we're not going to provide more gasoline. We don't care if it hurts our country. The point is, though, they know the power of controlling the resource. That's what
Yeah,
causes inflation. But on the issue,
yeah, the economic warfare that's being played right
exactly.
now.
But now
Uh,
you do touch on the Bitcoin issue, and well, I don't want to. I'll let you go where you were saying to go because I do really want to talk about that too.
yeah, no, I mean, we can take it back into the more local and community level.
Well,
So,
that means local. Actually, I'm making it local now. I brought it up to a few people. I want to make it where people here, South Carolina or the low country, they're not just going to think Gullah Geechee people, good food, a lot of rice, the sea, palmetto trees. They are going to now think Bitcoin mining. And I told them we're the perfect place for it. So it is a very
yeah.
much a local issue too. But, just to make that little note.
Yeah, and I would like to hear about the specifics on the Bitcoin plan. But for us, we were talking about the fiat system versus this new system that is deflationary by nature. It allows equal access and opportunity to one, work on the protocol, and then also use the protocol at will. You don't have to ask permission from any central actor. We don't have to go to the Federal Reserve. We don't have to go to US or France in order to be issued this currency. As long as we have an internet connection, as long as we have a phone or a laptop, that anybody in the world can purchase this asset that is finite. It is a limited resource. It's actually more limited than real estate. It's more limited than gold. It is fixed. So when we talk to our constituency, or our community, in our groups, we say we know our history of how financial institutions have discriminated and have disproportionately excluded us from economic activity, right? Whether
That's
that is not receiving mortgage loans, banking loans, business loans to create economic wealth for our communities. We have been denied. We have higher interest rates. When we do get the loans, we have higher interest rates than our white counterparts. So these are central actors. These are other human beings who are controlling the issuance of the monetary system, right? And they can decide on their own bias of whether you receive that economic inclusion or not. So we have decided that, and now the technology has allowed this. We didn't have this in 2005, right? We had to work with the system, and we had to go to these banks that were denying us whether there's loans for our business, for us to be entrepreneurs and build wealth for our families. We had to work with them. Now this is completely removed. It's decentralized. That means we can talk about how Bitcoin works on a technical level, but just for this conversation, that me, you, any person in South Africa, Colombia, they can run a Bitcoin node And basically, what that is you go on,
Oh,
Bitcoin, and you download the program. And for every transaction, for any transaction actually, to go through and to be verified,
it
every
requires police.
node in the world has to verify that,
Right.
right?
That is it.
So there's no cheating in the system, right? So that's what I believe underserved communities can benefit most from, just from the fairness, and that is finite. And the last thing I would say, especially for the community, you said it's the sixth poorest district in the country. Think about this, and people say, "Oh, it's so expensive. Is that 40,000, 45,000, 50,000, whatever?" I'm still going to say it's cheap at 100,000, but that's a different conversation. But when you look at the technicals, there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist. We actually already mined near 19 million, right? And the last one will be mined in 2100, 2150, I want to say. So we're like 90% there. And there's 46 million millionaires on planet Earth, right? There's only 21 million Bitcoin that exists, that will ever exist on planet Earth. So technically, on a mathematical basis, there's not enough Bitcoin for every millionaire today to get their hands on one Bitcoin. So when you play the simple supply and demand economics, it's just supply and demand. So when you look at 45K now, it's just like, all right, that's a discount. And I want to make sure that our communities, we don't miss the boat on something like this. We don't miss the boat in
Historically,
terms of investment, and then also the industries that's being built out. I want to talk a little bit more about the mining, because we are partnering with a few mining companies, and they're creating training programs for inner city children. I have connections in New York, have people in Texas, and say like, hey, we want to create social community platforms, right? And economic employment platforms and programs where we can upskill our Black and brown children into these careers that we know is going to last, that's only going to grow.
my
Mhm.
profile, because I don't know if you, I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with this, but those of us in the reparations movement, we sometimes in the scoff at the black and brown phrase, and here's why:
Okay.
because when it's just brown,
Educate me.
when it's just
Educate me.
brown people getting policies, I don't know who brown people are, but when it's just brown people
Mm.
getting policies, like let's say Native Americans, they have the reservation system. I know the history is ugly, but they still have them. They have some taxes different status. Some of them actually even get paid every month. None of that goes to Black Americans who too.
You're saying to direct these programs directly to
Right.
Black
You
Americans.
know,
That's what you're saying.
when Asian Americans got the COVID-19 legislation, people could say what they
Sure.
want. I read
Sure.
the bill that was specifically for Asian Americans. So the
Right.
reason why we can just scoff at the black and brown phrase is because my platform is Repair Black America, and when Black America meaning Black Americans, not
Unapologetic.
brown, is
Mhm.
unapologetically. Now I tell people this is going to help you because historically speaking, two things you said. One thing I want to say first is that whenever Black America has done well, everyone did well. And when we did well while being terrorized day to day. No, we don't have 24/7 social media and news cycle then. But had we had it then, we would see black women being raped. We would see black men being raped. We would see people being hung from trees. We would see black children being fed to gators. We would see black Wall Streets, over 50 of them, being burnt to the ground.
Burned down.
Because we weren't
Mhm.
around to have it recorded, people minimize the emotional and economical impact of those atrocities. These things just happened like in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. Imagine the
Right.
generational wealth that was lost. So that's one thing I want to say. But in spite of that, when Black Americans have done well, in spite of all the stuff that's been done to us, unlike white Americans who were able to benefit from government programs we were denied, we did it truly putting ourselves up by our bootless straps. But everyone
Mhm.
did well. But when America does well, Black America doesn't necessarily always do well. We are always still to the bottom. So that's one thing. And two, you mentioned us missing the boat. That's true because we were always either kept off of it by violence or we were thrown
Mhm.
off of it after building it. So
Right.
you're right. That's why I'm probably the
But I'm
last.
saying the opportunity exists today, right now,
Well, I'm
right?
saying
Because I don't want it to be
right.
2040 and
That's what
then
I'm
we're
saying.
just getting started. Like we have a lot of people who are in this industry on the Lightning Network, who's working on Bitcoin mining, who are training kids. So it's like, hey, start today.
And that's
All
why
right.
I'm here because I'm like, I'm the last person y'all probably expected to maybe to take on to gravitate towards Bitcoin because I'm not in some big futuristic progressive and that's please a misnomer progressive city quote unquote like San
Okay.
Francisco even though they have a lot of people living in cardboard boxes don't sound too damn progressive to me
Mhm.
or New York City where you know they have a lot of homelessness too and people being gentrified out of their communities not too progressive to me. I'm in a small town in the rural South, and not just the rural South, the deep South. South Carolina is a state of the quintessential deep South state, and yet here I am talking to people about Bitcoin. Some people don't know. It's funny
Mhm.
I mentioned that to some people. They don't know. I think I've. I think I've seen on McDonald's the drive-through window they accept Bitcoin or they accept cryptocurrency. Like some people don't know what it
What
is.
is the gap? No, I'm interested. So, what is the gap of understanding? What is the first sort of questions that they ask about Bitcoin?
So some
Because
people
this
have
will help
heard of it.
me. Yeah.
Some people have heard of it, but they don't see our people. And when I say our people, I'm talking about Black Americans first and
Mhm.
foremost, but even the white Americans here and
Yeah.
people of other races and
Absolutely.
ethnicities are so busy struggling to survive, like working 2 to 3 jobs and still not making enough. This is especially true in the Black Americans' case, but even the white
Mhm.
Americans here too who are poor. Not
Right.
trying to say the two are
So they
equal
don't
because
have enough time to like
right.
dedicate
So
to
heard of it, but
read
they don't
and
know what
learn
it
and
is,
educate. And,
and
and,
it's
and I will tell you this. I'll tell you this. I got off the phone with senators, right? So we talk to people who are creating policy, okay, and they don't know about this. So I
but
don't want to just say it's just it's an age thing. It's many
it's not
different
even
demographics.
anything.
We are early. We are early. So a lot of times in these conversations, it's just educating, like, okay, what is the blockchain? How does that work? Why is this different? Who is the creator of like Bitcoin? And you say it's Satoshi, but nobody knows who this is. Like, wait,
It's really
what? This is not a
complicated.
like. Is this a software company? Does this exist? I was like,
Well,
no, it's
people think it's
completely
like a
decentralized.
Japanese
Like,
guy,
it's
and I'm like, no,
yeah,
it's actually a conglomerate of different people who are anonymous and just
yeah.
gave
It's a
themselves
global network.
right.
Correct.
So,
Mhm,
people now people who do know about it, they don't
mhm,
trust it. That was me. Now, when I
mhm.
say know about it, that don't mean I can tell you, oh no, this Lightning
So,
Network.
what
And
was one of the concerns? Let's get into it. So, what was one of the first concerns that you
well, my
had?
concerns was always that okay, first of all, I saw what happened with that Robin Hood app with the whole GameStop
We
thing.
could talk about
And the
that. Yeah.
moment that people who are poorer and working class, and no, I am not Bernie Sanders here because my thing is on Repair Black America. So I'm always going to
Mhm,
go from the Black American, the freedman angle, but just general, whenever something is benefiting people who are supposedly not supposed to ever progress upward mobility in society,
mhm,
they always try to find a way to scam people out of their money, like happened with that Robin Hood GameStop
right.
fiasco. Then I was
Right.
also, I guess people are afraid of what they don't understand when it comes to things like this. They'll understand.
Mhm,
I'm like, okay, I can lose my money investing in this. I'm not going to do it. And yet,
mhm,
people spend far more on a month on lottery tickets and have a far lower
yeah.
chance of ever getting
They
a
treat that as their 401k, as their
right.
S&P 500.
Right, and yeah, so
Their stock
that's
market.
so I was thinking.
Mhm,
So some people I know, like I have a cousin, she buys lottery tickets, like plastic bags
mhm.
full of it. She's been
Oh man,
doing
I
it
know,
for
man.
decades. And
We got aunties like that. Yeah.
she could probably have she probably could have hit the lottery just by saving the money she has spent now on lottery tickets. And yet
Uh-huh.
people will do that before they'll do Bitcoin. And another thing is some people just they think it's only for quote unquote smart people and or you have to be like a real
Mhm,
nerd to be into that.
mhm.
And those were some of the
Okay.
misconceptions I had and other people
Yeah.
have had. And it's
Mhm,
not that I wasn't saying that when I say smart people who like, do coding, some people think it's something
mhm.
very niche like that, and it's none of those things.
Let's walk through all three of those because I think that is a perfect place to start. So, one with Robinhood. Robinhood, and you have to be careful where you get your Bitcoin. There's a saying called "not your keys, not your coins." So, what that means is Bitcoin, every transaction, it has public key, which is publicly facing. So it's like a string of numbers that everybody can see, but it doesn't tell you who owns it. So the person who owns it is the private key. So it's like a second layer of security that you hold, that is your ownership. That is your Bitcoin. You hold those keys, right? That's your private key. Now, a company like Robinhood, which they don't tell you, unfortunately, and that's why we have to educate. They are the ones that hold
Yeah,
the private keys.
it's
So
simply
they're actually they're holding the Bitcoin. You just own the dollar amount of Bitcoin, but you don't actually
right.
hold
It's like you
the
own
hard
value.
asset.
Like it's during the days when we used to base our currency off of gold. They have the gold. You're never going to get it. You just have a
Mhm.
bill that's supposed to represent the value of gold. But at any point, they have the actual resource. Yes.
Right. So
That's
people
the
have to
nature.
know what exchanges. Yeah. So we work with Kraken. Like you get to hold your own private keys. Even Coinbase. They are uh, questionable in other areas, but Kraken, even Cash App. Like you hold
Issue
your
with
key.
Coinbase. It's not the Bitcoin stuff. It was just that it wasn't user friendly, and I got off it really
Right.
fast.
No, but a lot of people say like, "Hey, I thought I can hold my own like money like with Robinhood. You know how they shut down trading for during the AMC's GameStop era, and they stopped trading. Well, they stopped people from buying, so like you can only sell, and you're like, wait, how can you control that? Like you're controlling the levers of the market. Like this is not a free market now. So you have to be careful what exchanges that you use and make sure that you hold your own private keys. The second portion was when you was talking about the lottery tickets, right? I think what we teach in BBB is having a long-term mindset when it comes to finances. We talk about dollar cost averaging. So dollar cost averaging is the consistent accumulation of an asset over time. So if you have $10, $20, $100, whatever you have that you can set aside, and every the first Monday of the month, I put $10, I put $50 in Bitcoin. And there are apps right now that you can preset it. So it will take that money and like on every first Monday of the month, you can buy $20 worth of Bitcoin and just slowly accumulate over time. Because Bitcoin has accumulated in terms of has rise in its value by
It just hit a
200%
record this year.
year
Yeah.
over year, every from the decade, I guess 12 years now that it's been around. Well, now like close to 14.
Yes.
On average, it has increased in value by 200% every year. This is insanity. There's nothing in Wall Street that can do that. There's nothing. There's no asset. You put your money in the S&P. You can't. It's nothing that has performed that well. It's the best performing asset on planet Earth that exists. Okay, so that's number two in terms of not feeling like, oh, if you put that $5 on a lottery ticket every week, that adds up like every month. That's $20, and you most likely going to get statistically, you're going to get nothing out of that. Where I can put that $20 each month into Bitcoin or each week into Bitcoin, every day into Bitcoin, however you feel most comfortable. So it's having that, not having that short term horizon and having more of a long term of saying, hey, I'm going to generate wealth over time. And this is a wealth preserving asset. The last portion you talked about was is like this is
Coding, like
the
You
For the
have to be
nerds, yes.
right Silicon Valley intern type person.
Right. So I'm not sure if you heard what happened in El Zante. It's in El Salvador, right? So
They
El
made it
Salvador,
they made
yeah,
it one of their national currencies, right?
absolutely. So they made it, and I guess that was last year,
Last
2020. Yeah, 2021. President Bukele, he made Bitcoin legal tender. So their legal currency is one, the US dollar and Bitcoin, right? And how that started was this area in El Salvador is called Bitcoin Beach. Now, these uh, are people living in a community that I think on average, like their monthly, they make maybe $100 a month, you know, in El Salvador. Like that's like the average income that they have in these communities. So it's very, very poor communities in a poor country, right? But they were able to download download different apps, the Strike app they were using, and they were doing their entire economy in Bitcoin. And that actually got the word to the president is like, oh wait, they're exchanging like Bitcoin and this economy is growing, and they're doing services and goods and trading melons and juices and fruits and stuff like that and doing Bitcoin. So when I say it's like, oh, this is for the high tech guys, that's a myth, because the reason why El Salvador now has Bitcoin as legal tender is because a tiny little island in the country, right? And it was community based. So it's a couple of clicks, a couple of buttons, like, hey, this is where I buy, this is where I sell, or I press this button. If you know how to work in Instagram, you can work Bitcoin. That's as simple as it gets. If
Well,
you know
let me
how to
tell
scroll
you,
through
I have
Instagram.
a friend in Nigeria, which is a modern country, but is still
Mhm.
very much so a developing nation. And Bitcoin is booming over there. Like my friend, he
Yes,
teaches
absolutely.
classes on it, and
Got a lot
his
of
classes
connections
are
there.
always full. So it's definitely spreading. And I want to say, because I'm running on a reparations platform,
Mhm.
and the big fear when people hear me talk about Bitcoin, we ain't gonna give you our reparations in Bitcoin. I want the US dollar to give everybody else. So I want to be
Yeah.
very clear to people. My platform, I always say direct monetary payments. So in case America tries to pull a fast one, I don't foresee this happening. And this
Mhm.
country knows no levels of depravity that they will not go to when it comes to being
This is
anti-black.
true.
But I always say direct monetary payments. And the reason I say monetary payments is because it's going to be whatever tender that is backed by the federal government. Now, that being said, I am, as of now, that's the US dollar. I am pushing Bitcoin because, one, after doing my own study, even though I spoke with people who are very passionate about it, such as yourself and educated, I don't back nothing that I am not convinced will be good for my people and
Sure.
for my
Mhm.
district first and foremost. Even though I'm going to be a congressman in the United States, the federal government, and I'm gonna have my legislation will be national. I always start off with South Carolina District 6. And I found out the concerns about Bitcoin, the main criticism that's levied against it is that it's bad for the environment. Now, I find that quite hypocritical when you look at the fact that Black Americans
Right.
have been living in
Mhm.
communities with the highest level of toxicity in their water, highest
Mhm.
levels of fuel exhaust, and are most likely to be in areas where the environment has been so polluted, we're more likely to have allergies, asthma, bronchitis, and other respiratory problems. So I want to know, with these bleeding heart environmentalists, where are they when Black Americans are dying from either Flint not having clean water or Denmark, South Carolina not having clean water? Where are these people who are so concerned about the environment who are criticizing Bitcoin? You're going to be concerned about the environment. Let's be concerned about the environment through and through. I did research because I ain't
Mhm.
going to stand on nothing that I cannot defend. So I found out, first of all, that Bitcoin can actually be an asset to the environment. But there are two things it
Yes.
has to have. One,
Mhm.
it has to be located close Bitcoin mining centers, which is a booming industry. And that's what I want
Mhm.
to bring to my district because it could be a
Mhm.
high source of jobs. And not just that, it can also lead to other industries. But here's what you have to have: you have to be close to sources of energy. I live in
Mhm.
a rural region, but it's coastal as well. We have an
Mhm.
abundance of swamps, marshes, tributaries.
Hydropower. Hmm.
Not yeah, not no, not hydropower.
Okay.
It's a segment of that
Okay.
in the ocean. It's called tidal power. It's a
Okay.
new industry that's still developing, but
Hmm.
few areas can do it. But our area can. It's when you put these type of receptors that absorb the energy of the ocean's rising and lowering
Tides
tide.
coming in. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
But not just that. It can even be built to absorb the energy of hurricanes. Now, I read in a comic book when I was in high school that a small hurricane has the power of like 300 nuclear bombs. And I actually went online and did research and found out, okay, it was a little bit of exaggeration, but
Hmm.
a small hurricane has a hell of a lot of power. And excuse my expression, enough power that it can power a large city for an entire year. I am thinking, and this is my vision, two industries. One will benefit the other. I want to bring tidal power to my region that is coastal, has an abundance of land. First of all, it's going to be clean. Everybody talks the Green New Deal, Green New Deal, Green New Deal. I don't know what the hell that is. Not interested in it. I know Alexander Ocasio-Cortez got something to do with it. I ain't read the fine print. I'm not going to sign anything on which I have not read the fine print. But I know about her Green New Deal. I'm
Okay.
interested in coming up with a good deal for once in this country for Black Americans. And my district is majority Black. So here's my Green New Deal alternative. Tidal energy. It's clean. It comes from something that's always going to happen. The ocean tides are always going to rise and fall. And being that I'm in a subtropical region, we are always going to have hurricanes and tropical storms come here. I mean, when it rains here, like today, you will think a tropical storm is about to make landfall. That energy will be clean, it will be efficient, and it will be able to power bit mining centers. But not just that. Also, bit mining can help lower energy costs for businesses and homeowners in my area. I did the research. I found out that this myth that it takes something they claim more um, energy than some entire town uses an entire year to mine one Bitcoin. Um,
Oh,
Bitcoin.
yeah, that's
I
FUD.
know.
That's actually not correct. Yeah.
I did my research. Actually,
Okay.
the bigger concern is all of the energy waste that goes
Yeah.
unused and that
Yeah.
rises, that causes people's bills to increase. I found out that Bitcoin mining can actually be used to
Mhm.
optimize energy usage. The waste from
Mhm.
energy and excessive
Yeah.
energy that rises people's bills and that literally could put people on the street when they can't afford it, that could be used and diverted to Bitcoin mining industries. That's one thing I found.
Absolutely.
Second of all,
Mhm.
I found out that there's another technology that might help in other areas that some Bitcoin mining centers have been using in the United States of America and China, where most Bitcoins are mined.
Mhm.
And it's called cool immersion, where it's pretty
Mhm.
much a way like these areas that have large servers. When one large server is it begins to overheat. That large server is immersed in this type of mist that cools, and the energy is then diverted to other ones. It's pretty much like cycling energy while
Yeah.
deliberately cooling the other, and that could be used in other industries as well. So I always said to people when someone confronted me with that, I said, "So let me get rid of my washing machine." Because washing machines are probably running on my energy bills. I said, let me get rid of
Mhm.
my TV and just turn on the radio since the
Yeah.
television runs the bill. We don't preclude innovative industries because they cause problems. We look at how to solve the problems that those
Mhm.
innovative industries bring so we can continue to innovate. Because
Mhm.
if someone would have said, well, let's not go and get a wash machine, let's go and wash clothes by hand because
Yeah.
wash machines
Takes too
cost
much energy. Yeah. Uses too much energy.
right.
No.
We would never
Right.
program. Someone would have
Of course.
said, the radio is too loud, it's hurting people's ears. Let's
Yeah.
not use the
Yeah.
radio, let's not television. We have to solve issues that innovation brings in order to continue innovating. That's my approach. And one thing about me, I'm gonna stand my ground on something, unless I'm
Mhm.
proven wrong. I don't mind admitting that I'm wrong, but on this here, I haven't seen any evidence of it.
That's amazing. And you definitely have done your homework. And I'm interested to hear more about this tidal power because that is something new. I mean, the hydropower, I know people in New York are using the power from
Yeah,
Niagara Falls,
right.
like they're taking the power from there. I mean, in Texas, they're using wind energy and
Here
nuclear
we do
energy,
solar.
the
We
wind and
have a solar
solar.
city here.
And I was telling you about El Salvador, which is wild. He actually plugged up the mines to a volcano, so it's
Right.
volcanic energy,
Very
and
cool. You
that's
see,
how they're powering.
innovation.
Yeah.
Innovation breeds innovation. Now, the
Mhm.
problem is when corrupt, despicable people are in these industries and they don't give a damn about the community. They definitely don't give a damn about the people who live in the community. That's the problem. But
Mhm.
when you have the right people in place who are people first oriented, and that's the case with me, you are going to innovation should breed more innovation. So in my
Mhm.
case, here, here's the issue. In my rural community, there's a rural community in my district called Gillisonville. It's like rural, not even a stoplight, not even a gas station, but they have a solar city there. It's a city of
Mhm.
solar panels. And the issue when they first brought it, I don't know who does this. I guess I'm gonna be honest. Maybe like white soccer moms who do this because black people usually don't complain about stuff like this. Someone was complaining about the humming from the solar panels. Like, I mean, just
Okay.
shut up. I mean, hell, I mean,
It's
it's cold,
annoying. It hurts my
but
ears.
the solar panels have a home.
Yeah.
So what did the people do? They
Mhm.
say, "Oh hell, well we can't use solar energy, y'all." Break them down and got rid of it and said no more solar
Oh
energy.
wow.
No, they innovated. They came
Yeah.
up with some invisible sound filter in in this rural community that now you go there and it's like complete silence. Only you have to go
Mhm.
beyond the
Finding solutions, man. It's
you
about
know
finding the
hear
solutions.
the
Yeah.
humming, but outside of that, you don't hear nothing. They found solutions, and it's so cool
Mhm.
driving through there. They have stop lights, I mean stop signs and all. It's just a city of solar panels. Now here's the problem though: windmill, you can never. The wind is not always gonna blow
Yeah.
at a
It's
consistent time.
intermittent energy. So like sometimes it works and sometimes the wind is blowing, sometimes it's not. Same
If
thing
you live
with
in Florida
solar,
and you
It-
rely
it-
on solar energy, you in trouble for 6 months out of the year. Okay.
yeah.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
hydro power, Niagara Falls. When it's a drought, Niagara Falls can dry up, or during the winter, Niagara Falls freezes.
Mhm.
However, name one time when the oceans have not had rising tides and lowering tides. Even a rain puddle has a tide.
Mhm.
Okay. If I
Yeah.
in my yard, we're in an area called the Low Country of South Carolina and
Mhm.
Georgia. We're only a few
Mhm.
feet above sea level at the most, and some areas are underwater, the Louisiana Bayou,
Right.
a region we're compared to quite often. When it rains here, we get puddles throughout our yards, literally. And sometimes it rains so hard. In some areas, people have to get a boat to get out their yard. And some of the more
Mhm.
far-flung areas, okay?
Mhm.
Even those puddles, though, have tides. The ocean is always going to have tide. When I
Right.
don't like fishing, I have friends who love fishing. When I am being in one of my more friendlier moods, I may go and accompany them. And when that tide comes in, you better get out of there because an area
Mhm.
where the water only come up to your ankles, when that tide comes in, it'll be up to your forehead, if not sort of completely submerging you.
That's everlasting. Is a renewable energy source
Exactly.
that's everlasting. It never
And we don't
stops.
talk about
So
that enough. Exactly.
24/7 the tides. Yes, from the
And
ocean. No, I'm on. Yeah. I'm
that's why
on board.
I'm embracing this Bitcoin mining corridor. One, it'll bring industry to my area, and it
Absolutely.
also we don't have to tear down a hell of a lot of these beautiful, the quintessential South, but the coastal South. We have the coastal oaks, the ones that the branches get so heavy they hang on the ground and they curve back up, and the swing moss. We don't have to tear down our palmetto trees and coastal pines. Bitcoin mining can be very environmental friendly because the center itself can be built using green environmental coals. That's one. Two,
Yeah.
this will be helping bring industry and jobs to my area. And with this industry, you have people who make higher wages. That's going to bring more investment from other industries to my area. But we can be the epic center for Bitcoin mining in the United States of America because no area of the United States of America has that market corner. I am going to fight like hell to make my industry that area. And then those things you mentioned, Bitcoin mining camps. And I know that there's something in the Bitcoin world. I know y'all get very touchy when people just say, oh, cryptocurrency, because y'all feel like Bitcoin is the own thing. I know, and I don't want to get into that. But
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
just saying
Yeah.
that this will put us on the map for
You
this
know us. You know
industry
us.
overall. And look,
Go ahead.
the
Go ahead.
thing is, I'm already showing how innovation begets innovation because if it wasn't for me, because I do my own policies, I have a political strategist, but he makes what I want work. Okay, but I do the initial research, I get the initial idea. I don't have anyone, I don't have some corporate suit or a team of strategists telling me what I need to do to win an election. No, I'm not running
Right.
to win an election. I'm running to improve the lives of people in my district and to repair Black America, to fix America. So I did
This
all
is
my
your
own.
vision. Yeah.
But I was saying, okay, how am I going to make sure that Bitcoin mining doesn't heat my beautiful swamp and marshes that I've grown up around, fished and got shrimp from, crab from, that is
Mhm.
tied to the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Creoles, what they call it, our culture? How am I going to make sure our oceans aren't overheating? What am I going to do when people challenge me on that? I had to do research. That's how I came across tidal energy, and I've studied it. I have a whole dossier of websites and things I've printed out about it. Already, I'm showing people that innovation should lead to more innovation, not retreating from something that can be innovative because we claim it causes a problem that really the science is still not definitive on it in the first place.
Right. I mean, this is amazing, and I'm excited for your campaign, and you are really taking new technologies and finding ways. How does this empower my district? How does this empower my communities? And
That's
you're
my platform.
thinking innovatively. Yeah, and you're taking the new technologies that's available, and you're saying, okay, how can this help my community? So you are definitely forward thinking, and you're creative, and we need more of that in order to get the
I want to say
solutions
something
in
else.
our districts. Go ahead.
I don't think this
Sorry.
is the most important part that I don't think either of us touched on, but you alluded to it. The
Mhm.
no another important thing is even though I tell my people I am not going to say okay reparations in Bitcoin. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have people knocking on my door with pitchforks and torches.
Hey, do
and
you? Hey, this is your
we
campaign,
some,
man.
and look, we some rice eating butter bean, cornbread, neck bone, okra.
Oh, that's
With,
good. That's a
with
good time.
these folks around here,
I can
you
get
find
down.
someone from here. People out here are strong, women,
Mhm.
men, and the women. So I'm not
Mhm.
trying to have them in my door with
Hey, now
pitchforks.
that's goodies. Invite me to that cookout. Go ahead.
Here's what I want to say though.
Mhm.
We have been locked out of every industry. Black Americans, and we weren't just locked out of it with the no Negroes allowed signs. People want to romanticize anti-black. It's like, oh, it wasn't so bad. They just couldn't go to the same water fountain with a white person. They couldn't go to school with a white person. Newsflash, anyone who's dumb enough to think that, we weren't sweating white people like that. We actually wanted to be in our own communities. What we were fighting against was the inequality and the equity and the lack of access to resources. We were kept out of industries that we built, but not just with signs, with violence, and the most cruel violence I mean, people being skinned alive, castrated. Bitcoin, to me, is an opportunity that my people should have had with so many other industries, industries that would not even exist without us. This technology we're using, invented by a black woman, voice over internet protocol, Marion Croak, who's still alive, who doesn't get her flowers, where we people could speak over the internet with their voices, donating. Which, by the way, if people want to donate to me, I accept Bitcoin. It's marcelforcongress.com/donate, and the donate with Bitcoin button is right there. A black woman allow people to donate via crowdsourcing. Industries that
Mhm.
we started, we've been locked out of with violence. Bitcoin, I feel, in a very bittersweet way, is an opportunity for my people to have access to a burgeoning industry
Right.
that had we still been in the times of legalized, because it still happens, but it's not legal anymore.
Segregation. Mhm.
Jim Crow and redlining, they would not have been able to have access to. Like you said, I
Right.
don't want my people, but the bitter thing is we have been beaten down to the bottom. And unlike every other group, Black American wealth, and not Black immigrants, Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves, our wealth is heading down.
Mhm.
Unbelievable. Every other group is seeing their wealth go up. Our wealth is heading down. So my people are trying to get food on the table. So even though with Bitcoin, it's the only industry I can think of where with $5 or $10, you can own, you can have an investment. I tell people, think of Bitcoin like land, like
Mhm.
land. We
Yeah,
can
have
buy
a piece of the
land.
pie. Yeah.
Black
Mhm.
Americans have had stolen from them in the most deplorable violence. And whether it was legalized violence or shotgun torches or flooding our communities with water and then stealing it from us violence, we
Mhm.
can finally get land with just $10, $10 a week even. And you can own
Mhm.
land that can be valuable and you can use it as collateral. One guy with whom I'm
Mhm.
speaking with, he's a supporter of mine. He's a really good guy. I forget his name is Kevin. He bought a home by using Bitcoin as collateral. When I went to
Mhm.
buy a house, I had the income. No, I don't make a lot of money, y'all. Don't come around on me. I'm a teacher. If
I'm
you go
coming to
around
your mansion. What are you talking about? Invite me
me,
out to
I
South
will
Carolina.
I'm a teacher. So
Big
uh,
baller.
I had the income, I had good credit, but I had no collateral. So the home that I really wanted, I couldn't get. And now, because of financing the campaign and stuff, I'm not as in good a financial shape. This guy used Bitcoin as his collateral, and he was able to get a home loan using Bitcoin. Opportunities, Black Americans, we own less homes now than we did during the 1960s when it was
60s.
legal
Yep.
to discriminate against us. Bitcoin, he was able to use that as collateral and got a loan and got the home of his dreams. So I want to make sure my people, any industry, and Bitcoin being one of them, are not excluded from it. But I see this industry not just giving my people access to participate in it, but giving them opportunity in my majority Black district to dominate it. Have us be the epicenter, my beautiful coastal region, be the epicenter of Bitcoin mining that no other corner of the U.S. has the market on. But we have that opportunity. And that's why I'm running.
Amazing. Marcel, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your community and your district. And you are thinking in ways that most political figures, policymakers are, quite frankly, not brave enough to go. And you are thinking about innovative solutions to help your community. And I definitely support that, and we're going to continue these conversations. As a matter of fact, I have to get you in contact with one of the mayors. Is I'm not sure if you heard Mayor Jason Stewart. He's from Cool Valley, Missouri, and he was the first mayor to actually issue Bitcoin to the all the town members. So, and but the only sort of stipulation is that you have to engage in some form of community project in
Wow.
the in Cool Valley. So like whether you're
Well,
cleaning
that's a
up,
cool thing to do.
community center,
Alex.
yeah, yeah, right. No, he's a great guy. He's a great dude. We have a lot of conversations, or like let's say you work volunteer at the YMCA or something, whatever. I think you would receive something like $500 in Bitcoin, and like you just have to set up the wallet, the Bitcoin wallet, and it sends to you. But you have to do a community based project. So these are people. When you're telling about the title energy, I'm like, wow, that's innovative. And that made me think of him. It's like, wow, that's innovative. So you guys are really, and really it's the next generation. Is just our generation who are coming up with these solutions, right? Because we know about the technologies, we know about the opportunities that exist today that people who are in older generations just don't quite see or don't quite understand. So you are part of that charge, man. So if anybody wants to support you, learn more about you, find out more about your campaign, where should they go?
If you want to know more about my campaign, first of all, you can start here, marcelforcongress.com/donate. And then you click on other links to read more about me. So it's
Mhm.
Marcel and MarcelForcongress.com. And there I have my entire platform, my biography, and I have the donate button, which does accept Bitcoin now. And if you want to follow me on social media, I am most active on Twitter, Marcel for Congress, but it's the digit four, not the word FOR, the digit four. But I also have Instagram, Marcel digit four Congress as well. And but like I said, find me on Twitter. You'll find my other social media pages. But please donate. I accept Bitcoin because the only way I'm going to be able to make these things happen. And by the way, I just read that they did an executive order on Bitcoin, and it wasn't necessarily Bitcoin friendly. The only way you're going to have Bitcoin friendly people like me in Congress is if I get to Congress. And that does not happen by people just saying, "Hey, man, I like you, bro." It really does happen with two things: vote, I have to get the most votes. But in order to get voters, I have to let voters know
Need
about me.
that funded. Yep.
This is not New York City, y'all. This is not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's district. So I can walk down a block and hand out flyers to walk passerbys. No, this is a rural district. I have to use a lot of television. I have to use a lot of radio. I have to use a lot of newspaper. I have to do a lot of social media as well. So I need those things cost. That's how they price people, good people, out of government by making it so expensive that you can't stay in. So I accept donations in USD and also Bitcoin. I set up a wallet with OpenNode, and the link is right there. So it works because people have been donating to me with Bitcoin, which my treasurer was like, "What is this?" He's an older man. I have to explain it to him.
No, I was just going to say we'll put all that information into the bio to make sure that people get contact with that and with the links and everything. Appreciate it.
Well, no, thank you for having me. And in spite of all the technical difficulties of living in a rural community.
Oh, no, we're good. We're nice and clear. We HD now.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Yeah. This is the first of many conversations. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope so. Thank you.